You feel deeply parched, like very parched. Hours have passed. Your tongue seems like somebody packed it using dirt, and next mixed extra dirt for seasoning, and next, purely for amusement, some extra dirt sprinkled on top. Today, visualize you cannot merely stroll into the pantry, fetch a cup, open the faucet, and bam, chilly, pure, purified, secure drinking fluid. Zero faucet, zero flask, zero dispenser unit, zero Dasani, zero Voss, liquid bearing its oddly pleasing sticker, zero. What will you consume? That is the precise predicament each individual person across our globe confronted during the overwhelming bulk of our entire history. And the reply regarding what folks really consumed remains concurrently intriguing, revolting, shockingly brilliant, plus sometimes simply utterly crazy. Since below is the detail nobody teaches during class. Throughout much of human timeline, swallowing untreated water was deemed hazardous. And truthfully, they weren't incorrect. Early civilizations discovered ingenious solutions that span from, all right, that's genuinely quite clever, towards, hold on, people swallowed what? I must sit down for a minute. Strap in, we're traveling backward. First, consider the most apparent fluid, water. H2O is everywhere, correct? Creeks, ponds, rainfall, brooks. Certainly early societies merely ingested water? Indeed, yet conversely negative. Plus that negative aspect is when things become fascinating. Look, here's the problem regarding wild hydration sources which your past instructor purposely skipped past. They remain entirely packed with organisms that desire to destroy you. Microbes, leeches, wildlife excrement, deceased creatures, extra wildlife excrement. That identical stream a mastodon washed within yesterday, a coyote perished inside last week. Plus 10,000 pigeons have been treating like a restroom throughout the previous century. Consuming from a creek during the prehistoric era wasn't like tasting from a pristine fountain within an advertisement. It meant fundamentally risking a daily round of microscopic gambling. Occasionally you succeed, occasionally you contract cholera, while your system announces outright warfare against every individual one among your life decisions. Yet, prehistoric people, dating back hundreds of thousands of decades, weren't entirely ignorant regarding this. They adapted quickly, they studied environments. They realized that wildlife preferred to hydrate from flowing streams rather than still puddles. They deduced that precipitation, newly gathered, appeared typically less harmful. They began to comprehend, in a pragmatic manner, even lacking knowledge concerning microbe science, that certain fluid options proved superior to alternatives. Historical artifacts from locations across Africa stretching back beyond 200,000 years indicate that early Homo sapiens gathered near distinct hydration spots, not simply any stream, but specific ones. Geysers, particularly. Not creeks, not ponds. Geysers, since artisan liquid, erupting upward pure from subterranean, appeared less prone to getting polluted across the dirt. It hadn't remained resting idle, gathering whatever environment chose to toss inside it. That's not mere coincidence. That's behavioral observation. That's our forefathers acting wiser than we grant them praise for. However, behavioral observation merely takes you so far, since even the clearest appearing liquid might be concealing something dangerous. Transparent fluid might still transport parasites. That gorgeous alpine brook, the woodchuck 2 miles above, has been using it as a private lavatory. You'd possess zero method of detecting. Plus our forefathers possessed zero method of detecting why certain fluids made you ill, whereas other fluids didn't. They merely realized that it happened. Consequently, they began seeking out substitutes. And here is when matters become incredibly fascinating. During one era, while researchers argue precisely when plus where, though we're discussing at minimum 10,000 years past, likely significantly older, somebody uncovered something through chance. Crops, moisture, duration, warmth. Combine those 4 elements together. Let it rest for a duration. Return later, plus what you hold is unlike what you began with. What you possess is ale. Unlike the refreshing, fizzy, hop-heavy IPA you'd purchase at a boutique tavern. Not even similar. Prehistoric ale appeared dense, fibrous, clumpy. Actually, you sipped it using a tube, a bamboo tube, purposefully to strain away the thick particles drifting atop the top. It felt more like a mildly intoxicating oatmeal blend that somebody chose to label a drink. the historical counterpart of a nutrition blend, except brewed, plus nobody was selecting it for the flavor. Moreover, it became one among the finest civic wellness breakthroughs throughout human timeline. Observe why. The mechanism of brewing destroys microbes. The gentle tartness which forms throughout brewing generates a habitat unfriendly toward numerous germs. The ethanol volume, even at comparatively minor fractions, provides another level of defense. The conversion of untreated, possibly hazardous fluid into brewed potion successfully sterilized it. Individuals who consumed brewed potions became ill less frequently. They lived longer. They produced more offspring. Those offspring learned to ferment. From an absolute evolutionary perspective, the clan which discovered ways to craft ale possessed a huge edge above the clan which was still risking with untreated creek liquid each dawn. Plus, we possess amazing proof regarding this. Within historic Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq, approximately, there exist documented logs from the Sumerian society beyond 5,000 years back, which feature distribution logs. What were laborers constructing the massive shrines plus statues compensated using? Not solely meals, ale. A daily allotment of ale. It wasn't an indulgence. It wasn't a weekend evening reward. It remained a necessity, a type of money, a dietary requirement, dispensed like a salary. There's actually a Sumerian verse, the Ode to Ninkasi, which remains basically a thorough fermentation guide, drafted as a chant toward the deity of ale. They were so obsessed with brewing they made it sacred, which truthfully seems quite typical for mankind. Whenever you discover something which keeps you breathing, you construct a deity around it. The Egyptians functioned utilizing precisely the identical reasoning. Laborers constructing the monuments obtained ale allotments as portions of their everyday payment. Egyptian ale was named HQT, articulated roughly hek et, plus it remained dense, nourishing, plus almost as intoxicating as a mild contemporary brew. Not sufficient to make you falling inebriated whilst dragging heavy masonry boulders across the wasteland. Just adequate to render the fluid secure plus provide you several bonus calories for the labor. Children consumed it, also. Diluted heavily, sure, yet regardless. Since the substitute involved fluid which could slaughter you, plus the mildly intoxicating crop broth proved mathematically the wiser choice. Allow that to settle. Prehistoric mothers were feeding their toddlers ale, not since they acted negligent or careless, but since they acted cautious. Since they were attempting the finest they managed, using what they grasped. Plus what they grasped observationally meant that ale kept folks breathing. While ale represented the laboring tier champion among historical drinks, vino was aiming to become something a bit more sophisticated. Vino crafting stretches back at least 8,000 years, with the earliest verified proof arriving from Georgia, the nation, not the American territory, near 6,000 BCE. Remnants within historic pottery containers. Molecular testing of tartaric substance. Prehistoric vine seeds crushed into the soil. The proof remains firm and undeniable. Mankind has been brewing grapes for longer than literacy has survived. Ponder regarding that. We were crafting vino before we actually possessed a method to document down the instructions. Plus, here's the intriguing aspect regarding vino during the prehistoric era. It was nearly constantly blended with fluid. Nearly constantly. Consuming pure vino, which the Hellenics named akratos, was deemed savage. Like actually something savages performed. A Hellenic consuming vino directly was projecting a message regarding himself. Plus zero among those messages seemed complimentary. A Latin consuming vino directly was executing a cultural misstep, approximately comparable to arriving at a fancy banquet dressed wearing your sweaty workout attire. Logically, you've appeared. However, what are you achieving with your existence? The correct method for sipping vino throughout Greece, Rome, plus most of the Mediterranean region involved to weaken it. Generally, 2 or 3 sections fluid for 1 section vino. They'd combine it inside a massive container named a crater, which rested near the middle of the desk, plus everybody would sip from it communally. A shared action, a refined ceremony. However, behold the brilliance concealed in plain view. Mixing vino into fluid, sanitized the fluid. The ethanol plus tartness destroyed microbes. The Latins weren't merely acting societally arrogant regarding how they ingested vino. They were unwittingly operating a civic wellness campaign during every individual supper gathering they organized. Latin warriors transported a beverage named posca. Basically, vino vinegar blended alongside fluid. It sounds completely disgusting. Plus, I believe if we're remaining truthful with ourselves, it likely was. Heated, tart, acidic liquid. Not exactly what you're desiring following a lengthy trek wearing heavy plating amid the summer warmth. Yet it proved secure, dependably secure. Battalions trekking across alien lands facing questionable plus unknown liquid sources could ingest posca plus remain operational, plus vigorous, rather than becoming destroyed by whichever regional fluid-carried microbe had chosen to spoil everyone's afternoon. You wish to comprehend portions of why the Latin military proved so incredibly successful across such a huge landscape for so long. Organization, resource networks, obedience, preparation, plus additionally posca. Never undervalue the tactical superiority of keeping your whole battalion not disabled by polluted liquid while your adversaries remain. Alright, thus we've discussed ale, vino, posca. This explains for a bunch of societies, largely Mediterranean plus Middle Eastern. However, what regarding everywhere else? What concerning the populations who lacked croplands or grapevines? What concerning the wanderers, the islanders, the folks residing deep inside woods or elevated upon alpine ridges? Here is when historical drink timeline becomes bizarre, plus I state that in the absolute finest conceivable manner. Let's discuss regarding kumis. Kumis represents brewed equine's dairy, stallion dairy brewed. You extract the dairy from a female stallion. You allow it brew organically via the microbes plus fungi existing throughout the atmosphere, plus inside the dairy itself. Plus you finish off holding a lightly intoxicating, bubbly, somewhat tart, somewhat zesty drink, which remained completely crucial for the wandering societies across the Eurasian plains during thousands of years. The Scythians ingested it. The Mongols ingested it. The forces of Genghis Khan nourished themselves partially upon it throughout their phenomenal conquests spanning Asia. Multiple Central Asian societies consume it until this moment. Plus, it wasn't merely a beverage, it represented survival architecture. Whenever you're a wandering tribe traveling alongside your flocks, spanning thousands of miles across empty plains, possessing zero lasting villages, zero crop reserves, zero grapevines, you don't always possess entry toward a dependable liquid well. Yet whenever you hold stallions, plus wandering plains tribes constantly possess stallions, you hold dairy. Plus whenever you hold dairy, plus you delay a little, you hold kumis, energetic, lightly intoxicating, securer than stagnant fluid. It kept whole societies traveling, brewing once more. Distinct topography, distinct base substance, identical core brilliance. Next exists chicha, a brewed beverage crafted utilizing corn, which remained entirely crucial for pre-Columbian South America. The Incan kingdom functioned upon it, actually. Chicha got utilized during spiritual rituals, presented toward the deities for offerings, utilized like a type of money, dispensed toward workers laboring upon enormous government-building tasks. Seem recognizable? The precise identical strategy, like the Mesopotamians utilizing ale, separately engineered thousands of miles plus thousands of years apart. Yet here's the segment regarding chicha's past, which causes every contemporary individual pause plus execute a double stare. The classic crafting technique entails munching the corn initially, munching it, next drooling it inside a receptacle, next allowing the entire mixture brew. The spit carries amylase, a stomach protein which degrades down the complicated carbohydrates within the corn into basic sweeteners, which fungi may subsequently brew. It succeeds. It represents truly brilliant chemistry, which those groups had deciphered out via strict observational monitoring, lacking any comprehension regarding proteins or brewing physics. It remains additionally by every logical contemporary measure, not how we desire our drinks crafted, yet it succeeded. Throughout thousands of decades spanning whole kingdoms, it kept folks quenched plus secure. Presently, we must to speak regarding something which silently altered billions of lives, plus rarely ever receives praise for a civic wellness triumph: heating liquid. The sweeping acceptance regarding heating fluid before ingesting it proved one among the most crucial advancements throughout human timeline. Plus tea represents in numerous manners the societal vessel via which it occurred, spanning massive sections of mankind. Tea has been ingested across China throughout roughly between 3,000 plus 5,000 years, relying upon whichever historical artifact you consider most persuasive. The mythical beginning tale features ruler Shen Nong near 2737 BCE, resting beneath a plant heating fluid since he felt already cautious enough to heat his fluid, which shows you something. Whenever a foliage dropped inside, plus he chose to taste it. If that narrative remains factually accurate, is nearly absolutely missing the focus. What isn't arguable remains the impact which tea traditions had upon citizen wellness. To brew tea, you heat fluid. Heating fluid destroys microbes, full stop. Thus, within areas whenever tea traditions grew thoroughly ingrained, China, Japan, Korea, massive sections of Southeast plus Central Asia, societies were accidentally plus constantly fixing the polluted fluid dilemma via their everyday habits lacking ever comprehending the bioscience behind why it succeeded. Fatality percentages regarding fluid-carried sickness among tea-ingesting societies remain drastically smaller compared against similar societies consuming unheated liquid. Not due to anything mystical inside the tea foliage themselves, although tea does possess certain real microbe-fighting traits, yet due to that single crucial phase which tea traditions rendered required plus customary, heating. Within Japan, the tea ritual, chanoyu, became one among the most complex plus formalized ceremonies throughout human society. Complete ideologies, visuals, plus societal frameworks got constructed surrounding the meticulous crafting plus ingestion of tea. It became artistry. It became spirituality. It became character. Plus, beneath all of that elegance plus ceremony existed a highly basic, highly pragmatic action, warming fluid until it proved secure to ingest. Adorned out wearing fabrics plus rituals, yet basically a civic wellness tactic which kept millions of individuals breathing. Here's another, which will truly astonish you. Coconut fluid. We think about coconut fluid like this contemporary health fad, this internet-pleasing quenching remedy advertised toward folks who practice stretching plus possess firm thoughts regarding supplements. However, coconut fluid has been ingested by mankind throughout exotic zones during centuries. Plus, it's not merely a delicious beverage, it's purified within the shell, organically, entirely. The dense casing plus exterior serve like a flawless natural barrier against pollution. For populations residing across exotic shoreline zones spanning Southeast Asia, the Pacific Isles, shoreline West Africa, plus sections of South America, coconut fluid represented actually nature's pre-wrapped secure drinking remedy. You break apart a coconut, plus whatever's within has never been subjected toward pollution. Zero microbes, zero leeches, zero farming spillage, simply pure mineral-heavy fluid, locked by environment itself. Prehistoric societies deciphered this out not via academic testing or science, but via monitoring. Coconut fluid didn't render you ill. Alternative liquids frequently did. The shell made you feel fantastic. Alternative liquids occasionally ruined your month. Thus, consume the coconut fluid. Basic, successful, plainly obvious during hindsight, yet still demanded somebody to deduce it out initially. Plus, spanning sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, plus South America, brewed tree nectar extracted straight from the sliced trunk of different tree types, gathered inside shells plus brewed organically inside merely hours, owing to organically present fungi, provided a comparable purpose. Distinct plant, identical concept. That separate overlap remains one among the most incredible elements inside this whole narrative. Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, West Africa, South America, Central Asia. Each among those societies, divided by thousands of miles plus frequently thousands of decades of existence, possessing zero contact among themselves, plus zero mutual academic structure, each separately reached toward the identical core realization. Brewed potions remain securer than raw fluid. The identical reply uncovered again plus again across each section of the populated globe. That's not randomness. That's human intellect functioning upon its most basic tier, watching, contrasting, enduring. However, this entire narrative isn't merely one lengthy, uplifting fable of historical cleverness. There's a truly grim aspect regarding historical quenching which warrants attention. Since not each drink remedy proved smart, several among them proved disastrously horribly terrible. Plus, the terrible ones usually would strike harshest the folks holding the minimal authority to change anything regarding them. Lead. We must to speak regarding lead. The Latins constructed fluid networks, which felt truly phenomenal during their era. Channels extending hundreds of miles. Complex delivery pipelines supplying civic washrooms, springs, personal residences. Construction triumphs, which wouldn't get equaled throughout beyond 1,000 decades. Incredible. Yet they constructed them using lead tubes. They utilized lead-coated containers toward keeping plus moving vino. They utilized a seasoning named sapa, vine juice, which had been condensed via boiling it inside lead pots, like a sugar plus vino protector. Lead became threaded throughout the Latin meal plus beverage stockpile upon numerous tiers. Plus the Latins possessed completely zero clue it was gradually intoxicating everybody. Lead contact harms intelligence. It damages brain performance. It alters conduct, reasoning, mood control, plus choice forming, especially alongside persistent minor-tier contact spanning years plus decades. There exists a truly fascinating, although currently argued among scholars, hypothesis that persistent lead toxicity within the Latin governing elite added toward the progressively unstable, delusional, plus self-ruining choice-forming apparent near the absolute peak of the kingdom throughout its final centuries. If that hypothesis completely stands firm, remains a topic for scholars to debate over. What isn't arguable remains the lead contact itself. Bone testing of Latin corpses repeatedly displays heightened lead amounts. The ruler's skeletons cannot deceive. Plus next appears the direct, awkward dilemma regarding availability plus disparity. All of this past, the meticulously crafted ale, the correctly weakened vino, the artisan fluid gathered by folks who comprehended which fountains remained secure, wasn't evenly accessible toward everybody. Throughout each layered prehistoric culture, rich folks held entry toward superior fluid spots, superior drinks, superior holding containers, highly meticulously managed brewing. Impoverished folks, captive individuals, traveling workers, the city peasants, they consumed whatever they might acquire, which caused greater contact toward polluted spots, which caused greater percentages of fluid-carried sickness, which caused briefer lifespans, plus greater youth fatalities. The fluid disparity we witness acting out throughout worldwide civic wellness emergencies nowadays isn't a contemporary issue. It remains one among the most ancient struggles throughout human society. Plus, it has never completely faded away. Thus, let's pull entirely the distance backward, plus observe at whatever this timeline truly shows us. Throughout much of human timeline, whilst for the massive bulk of those, approximately 300,000 decades, when physically contemporary mankind has roamed this globe, locating anything secure to consume remained one among the primary everyday struggles of existence. Not some trivial annoyance, not some peripheral worry, some issue regarding existence plus passing, which dictated where folks resided, how they structured their cultures, what they cultivated, what they praised, plus whoever lived lengthy enough to hand their wisdom forward. Plus, what did mankind perform regarding that struggle? They invented continuously throughout each ecosystem, each society, each period. They monitored whatever occurred whenever they ingested specific items. They recalled whatever their mothers plus ancestors had taught them. They tested some small bits occasionally unintentionally, occasionally purposefully, plus they retained whatever succeeded. They created societal habits plus traditions plus spiritual events surrounding the elements which kept them breathing. Since whenever anything rescues your existence, you consider it like holy. You construct a shrine toward it. You draft it inside legislation. You hand it toward your offspring. Ale wasn't merely a festive beverage throughout historic Mesopotamia. It remained a lifesaver, encased inside a pottery pitcher. Vino across Rome wasn't merely elegance. It represented a sterilization mechanism, disguised outward like refinement. Tea wasn't merely a tradition. It represented a daily action of existence which an entire society upgraded toward artistry. Kumis upon the plains wasn't merely nourishment. It represented the fluid base regarding a method of existence which dominated half the recognized globe. Chicha across the mountains wasn't merely ritualistic. It represented how a kingdom maintained its laborers operational. Each individual one among these drinks signifies human individuals fixing a truly difficult dilemma, utilizing the instruments accessible for them. Lacking clinics, lacking lenses, lacking any comprehension regarding whatever a microbe or a leech genuinely represented. Merely monitoring, behavioral spotting, persistence, plus gathered societal wisdom, handed alongside massive caution from one age toward the following. For ourselves, right here, during this instant, acquiring a secure cup of fluid requires roughly 3 moments plus 0 deliberate thinking. We've so absolutely fixed this dilemma throughout affluent advanced countries, at minimum, that we've practically wholly forgotten it represented a dilemma, that it represented the dilemma, that it dictated the whole path of human society, pushed the advancement of farming, swayed the genesis of spiritual customs, constructed markets plus commerce pathways, decided whichever towns endured plus whichever ones perished. Pure fluid availability isn't anything mankind has forever possessed. It isn't a standard attribute of the globe. It's something mankind constructed, gradually plus agonizingly plus faultily, across hundreds of thousands of decades of testing, plus disastrous mistakes. Plus nowadays, during 2024, hundreds of millions of individuals across Earth still do lack dependable entry toward it. The dilemma isn't completely fixed. It never was.